of each problem. All right, but just have them nearby. What we're doing today is using common logs, which are base 10 logs. So base 10 logs are called common logs and can be used in many applications. Common logarithms are usually written without the subscript 10. So they can be written with a 10. So for instance, if you see log of 2, that's the same thing as log base 10 of 2. So just to give you an example. So base 10 doesn't have to be written, it can. But if you don't see a base there, it's automatically a 10. Now your calculator is a base 10. So when you enter in the log in your calculator, that is automatically a base 10. Okay. So to start off with, just very easy problems. We're gonna use a calculator to evaluate each of these to the nearest 10,000th. How many decimal places is that? 10,000th. It's 4. Okay, so 4 decimal places after the decimal point. So for these first two, all I'm asking you to do is log of 3. Now, if that's the only expression, you technically don't have to close off the parentheses. It's not going to matter. Okay. So 4 decimal places. What would that be? It's the easiest question I'm going to ask you all day. 0.4771. Okay. Log of 0.2. What happens to the 9 on the end? The 7 rounds it up so that it's a point, or it's a negative 0.6990 would be how you would round that appropriately. So negative 0.6990. Now the first set of your homework problems are just like that. So are there any questions? You better write down the original problems. Capiche? All right. Now, the rest, well, the next 4 is going to require obviously more work. So this will be the middle section of your homework. So there's 3 different sections you'll notice on the board over there. So this is the middle section. Now, this is technically the opposite of what we were doing yesterday, where you were solving, getting rid of the logs so that you can figure out what x is. We're going to have to put logs back in on these because I cannot make a base 3 match a base 11. There's no power that's going to do that. So how you would approach these to start, you're going to, excuse me, you're going to put log base 10s on each side. Now you don't need the base 10s, so we're going to use common logs because we need x out of the exponent to figure out what it is. Now it is going to be a decimal. Every log is a decimal. So the first thing you're going to do is put a log, common log on each side. And this is in order to get the x out of the exponent. So on all of these, you're going to insert a common log on each side. Versus yesterday, we were trying to get rid of them. Okay. Now, I want x out of the exponent, so how do I make that happen? You expand it. So yesterday we were condensing everything down. Today you're going to be expanding because we need the exponents to go away. So that x will come down in front. So x log 3 equals log 11. Everyone with me so far? Now, how do I isolate x? It is currently x times log of 3. So how do you undo multiplication? You divide. So you're going to divide both sides by log 3 to get x by itself. So these are just basic algebra rules just applied to logs. Think of each log as a decimal. So you're dividing by the decimal that's being multiplied by x. So x is going to be equivalent to log 11 divided by log 3. Now this is where you bring in your calculator. Okay. Now, keep in mind, the calculator, yes, will do the work of finding your answer for you, but you have to be very specific. You need to make sure to close off each of these set of parentheses. Now it's just log 11 divided by log of 3, so that's one number each. But make sure to close off those parentheses, otherwise it's not going to calculate it appropriately. So log 11, close your parentheses, divided by log 3 to 4 decimal places. 2.1827. Now this was a very easy one. Okay. The next one will be a little bit tougher. E and F are going to be considerably lengthier. I wouldn't necessarily call them tougher, but you'll have to do more steps to them. So these are about as simple as they get. So are there any questions on the simple one before we do a little bit more? Now your first step's always the same. So what are we going to do? Put logs in. Okay. So that would be log of 3 to the power of n plus 2. Now this is a quantity, so putting parentheses around it would be a good idea. Equals log of 14.5. Now what? Bring the exponent down in front. So it's going to be the same first two steps every time. Logs go in, exponents come down. Okay. So leave parentheses around it, because that is grouped together. So n plus 2 times log of 3 equals log of 14.5. So nothing is different from our first two steps on the other one. Now, your goal is to get n by itself. What do we think we should do? Since there's only one n, we're just going to divide by log 3 again. Okay. Now we're not using the calculator until n is completely isolated. And it's not isolated yet, that plus 2 is still on it. So we're going to divide by log of 3 over here. So now we have n plus 2 equals log 14.5 divided by log 3. Now ignoring what's over here, how do you get n by itself? You're going to subtract 2. Now this over here is what you would enter into your calculator. Now, these calculators understand you should divide before you subtract. So this one, the only parentheses that are needed is going to be, again, like the last one, around the 14.5 and the 3. It will know to divide before it subtracts on the end. Okay? So you can enter in all of that. We don't want to do steps beforehand because then you're going to end up rounding before you should be. Oops. So 14.5 log divided by log of 3, and then minus 2. So 4 decimal places. No.
I didn't get that.
Did you close off your parentheses appropriately? Yours should look exactly like mine. That would throw it off, yes. Okay. So those calculators are smart, but you got to tell it exactly what you want it to do. So this would be 0.4341. So if the book does not specify, it should, but 4 decimal places. Okay. All right. Now these two were almost the same. There was the one extra step of subtracting 2 on this one. That was the only difference. Okay. Do you notice anything different about the next two we're about to be doing? They both have exponents. So this is going to make the process a little bit longer, but it's going to be similar on both. Now, if you write bigger, I would recommend trying to write smaller on these because it's going to take up quite a bit of room. But if we do run out of room for problem F, you could do it on the empty space on the back of the notes. So this process is going to be lengthy. Nothing changes though, especially in the first 2 steps. Okay. So our first 2 steps are what? Insert logs and bring the exponents down. Now, if you want to do both of those steps at once, you can. Okay. The exponents are going to have to come down and then the logs get put in. So we're going to have to bring each of these quantities down and insert logs. So if you want to do both at once, you have permission to do so. Just stay organized. So you're going to have 2x minus 5 times log of 8. So I put the log in, brought the exponent down in front. And then similarly over here, putting the logs in and bring the exponents down. So if you want to do both at the same time, you can. Okay. Just stay organized. So any question on that? So it'll just save you a line on your homework. All right, so this time we have parentheses on both sides. They need to go. Okay. So what you're going to do, now the logs are decimals, so they're technically numbers. You're going to distribute them in to remove the parentheses because we have an X on each side. They're gonna have to be on the same side at some point. So we have to get rid of the parentheses when we do that. Now these are very basic, okay? So log 8 times 2x is just 2x log 8, okay? Not a ton of complication there. Just stay organized. And then minus 5 log 8 for our second one. Okay. So just distribute that in to remove the parentheses. We're gonna do the same thing over here. So that would be x log 5 plus, you could do a 1 log 5, but just log 5 will cover it. Questions so far? So that's if you have parentheses on both sides. Now on problem D, the last one we did, there was only parentheses on one side, so you don't have to distribute on that. Okay. Technically you could, and it shouldn't affect the outcome of your answer, but it's going to complicate things a little bit. All right. Now once you're here, we have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms. We need the x ones on the same side. Okay. So kind of ignore the logs. If I had 2x minus 5 equals x plus 1, if I want to move the x's to either side, it doesn't matter which side you move them to, I'm going to move this one since it's positive, I'm going to subtract it over here. I'm just going to put them on the same side. So I'm going to subtract x log 5 over here. Now I can't actually combine these two because they're different logs, first of all. All right, but I need them on the same side. So I'm just moving them together. So that's going to go away. Now, if you can stay organized in the same step, I'm going to move the 5 log 8 over there because it's a non-x one. So plus 5 log 8, move it over here. Now these are not like terms, you're just swapping. So all I'm doing is switching those two and reversing their signs. So that the x ones are on the same side. So staying organized is key here. So we have 2x log 8 minus x log 5. We can't combine those in any way, so you just keep them separate. Okay. If it's not fully clicking, make sure you're writing down everything that I am. And then over here, I have log 5 plus 5 log 8. So I just swap the two so that the x's are on the same side and then the non-x's are on the other. Questions as of this point? We're going to be done in 2 more steps. Now, the issue here that we would run into, we need a single x to be isolated. We need x equals everything else. But we have 2 of them separate. Now, if I draw this symbol, what does that make you think of? That we did yesterday. If we were factoring a GCF out of a group, what do they have in common? There's an x. So when the x terms are on the same side, if there's 2 of them, you're going to factor out an x, or whatever the variable may be. So if you want to make a note to yourself in the notes, as soon as they're on the same side, factor out whatever the variable is. So we have x, and then it's just write what it is if you just pluck the x's out. Okay, so we have 2 log 8 minus log 5, and then everything on the right is still the same for right now. So again, just reviewing what we've done up to this point, we distributed into the parentheses. We moved the x terms to one side, the non-x terms to the other, factored out an x. Now we're where we were on the problem above this. How do you get x by itself now? Since it's x times all of this. You're going to divide. Okay. We're going to divide by 2 log 8 minus log 5. Now, here's where the calculator is going to come in. Okay. Now there's a few things I need to mention to you before we do the calculator. Okay. So now x is by itself. Is anyone unclear about how x got by itself? Now, this is a lot to enter into the calculator. Keep in mind there's multiple things in the numerator, multiple things in the denominator. Now the calculator automatically will open parentheses for each log, so you will need to close off these parentheses. But since there's multiple things in the numerator and denominator, we're going to bring in brackets also, which we may have done, we may not have. So I'm going to show you where they are if you don't know. But the brackets will separate the numerator and the denominator. So what I enter in the calculator is going to look just like that, okay, with the brackets and everything. But if you don't enter it in properly, it doesn't matter what you've done on your paper, your answer's going to be wrong, okay? Which would be very sad, considering all the work we just did. Okay? Now, if you don't know where the brackets are, it's the second option for the parentheses. So if you do second, open parentheses, now we're going to type in the whole numerator. So that's going to be log 5 plus 5 log 8. Log 5, close off the parentheses after the 5, plus 5 log 8. Close the parentheses and close the bracket. So that's the whole numerator. Okay. So take the time to type this in so you can get your answer right. Okay. Then the denominator is 2 log 8 minus log 5. So open your brackets again. Whoops, I forgot to divide. 2 log 8 minus log 5. Close out the parentheses after the 8 minus log 5. Close the parentheses and the bracket. Okay, so be detailed in what you type in. And this is what you should get. If you're not, you didn't use your brackets and parentheses appropriately. 4 decimal places would be what? 4.7095. So if you get to this point and don't use the calculator correctly, yeah, the work's gonna matter. So make sure to use everything as carefully as possible. Okay. Any questions on that? Now the next one's very similar. So this is a good way to test if you're picking up on what we're doing. Now, if you wrote a little bit bigger and you don't have enough room, I zoomed way in so I would have enough space. There's a lot of room on the back of the notes. Okay. So you could always rewrite the problem and do them on the back, on the bottom. All right. What should we do first? You guys walk me through this one. Add the logs, and if at the same time you want to bring the exponents down, you can do all of it at once. This one needs parentheses. Technically the 3y doesn't. Okay. So bringing down the 3y and adding a log in front of the 5. So this is doing 2 steps at once. If you don't want to do both steps at once, that's fine. But considering this one's going to be pretty lengthy like the last one, if you want to save some room. Okay. Now what? Get rid of the parentheses. So distribute, since we have y's on both sides, we're gonna have to get them together, so the parentheses have to go. Now this side, you don't have to worry about that, so we still have 3y log 5. Now what's on the right? Y log 8 minus log 8. Now what? Get the y's on the same side. Now this is the only non-y, so leave that one there and move this over here. It does not matter which way you move them if they're both on both sides. Okay, if you want to move it to the left every time, go ahead. So I'm going to subtract y log 8 and move it over here. Now, this log 8 over here is still negative, so make sure that that doesn't disappear on you. Okay. So we have 3y log 5 minus y log 8. Equals negative log 8. Now that the y's are on the same side, factor out a y. Okay. We need a single y, so it's got to be undistributed. Okay. So factor out a y. So if this makes sense to you to do the brackets, okay, hopefully drill that into your head at this point. Okay, so take out a y. So we should have 3 log 5 minus log 8 in the parentheses. Divide by 3 log 5 minus log 8. For these last two, these are as tough as they get, and they have the same pattern to them. Okay, so as long as you pick up the rhythm that we're doing, they shouldn't be as difficult as they appear to be. Okay. Now, our bracket's going to be necessary. Definitely around the denominator. Okay. So these will have parentheses. The denominator is going to have brackets. Technically, the numerator doesn't need them because there's only one thing up there. But it's never wrong to put them there when you don't need it. Okay. If anything, that's just being extra safe. So if you want to put brackets here, don't forget the negative sign in front of the log. Okay. But technically, since there's only one thing in the numerator, you don't need the brackets up there. It's not going to hurt anything though. So if you're doing that, open brackets. Negative is below the 3, so make sure that you do that. Log 8, close off the parentheses and the brackets if you're using them. Divided by, open bracket. Okay. 3 log 5 minus log 8. Make sure to close off the parentheses after each log, and then on the end, close off the brackets. This is what you should be getting. If not, you type something in incorrectly. So, 4 decimal places. Negative 0.7565. So this is as tough as they get. Is when there's exponents on both sides. Is when that's going to happen. Okay. Now, I will tell you the majority of your homework today for the ones that you're doing for these are going to be like C and D with 1 exponent, but tomorrow on your worksheet you're going to have double on some of them. Okay. All right. Any questions before we flip over on the back, which will take us like 30 seconds? Now the back, these two, this is going to be the last grouping in your homework. So it's all separated. We did this last week in the notes. But last hour didn't seem to remember. So your calculator does log base what? 10. Do you see an issue? Okay. There's a 2. You can still find this in the calculator. We discussed this last week in your notes. This is the change of base formula. So you can change it into 2 base tenths. Does anyone remember how to do so? Sounds familiar? Okay. So, how you would enter this into the calculator is log of the argument, which is the big number. So log of 11 divided by log of the base. So this is technically changing them to 2 base tenths. So this is equivalent to that. Okay. So in your calculator, you would do log 11 divided by log of 2. Whoops. Four decimal places? 3.4594. So how do we change the basis for H? Log 30 divided by log 8, which is what? 4 decimal places. 1 point, what? So we did discuss that last week. It is in your homework today. So I told you it was going to come up, but at least wanted to introduce it to you. Okay. So this is changing it from the base it is to a base 10. Okay. Your homework's on the board. Each section, so 1 through 6 is like the first 2 examples. 9 through 14 is like the ones with a lot of work. And then the last 6 are like these. Okay. Get to work.